Hi, and welcome to the next episode of C++ for Noobs, episode 5. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff today, so I'm going to go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
First thing I have to mention is I have a new editor. Hopefully the font size is a lot more um, legible, um, and hopefully the font looks nice and the editor looks nice and everything
Yep.
for everybody. This editor is called Microsoft Visual Studio Code, and it's free, and they make it for Windows and Linux, and it's the exact same on both systems. And it came out about a year ago, and prior to this I used an editor called Emacs for 20 years. And this came out about a year ago, and I switched, and I like it a lot. I think it's pretty nice looking, does a decent job.
Yep.
Okay, now today we're going to be talking about loops and arrays.
Okay.
And we're not going to learn everything there is to know about these subjects.
Yep.
This is introduction.
Yep.
And the reason I'm putting loops and arrays together is that I think that they go together.
Yep.
Arrays are big bunches of variables, all of the same type, all stored right next to each other. And loops are ways of executing the same code over and over and over again. And what you are going to end up doing a lot of with programming is writing loops that operate on arrays, or specifically on the elements of the arrays.
Yep.
So, to begin, let's get a basic framework going here. You can see lots of things are popping up as I'm typing. That's code suggesting completions, which I'm mostly just ignoring and continue typing. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you guys about is that I'm not going to begin this by teaching you C-style arrays. I'm going to go straight to teaching you C++ style arrays.
Okay.
And C++ styles arrays are called vectors.
Huh.
And the way that the vector works is that you type in vector, and then an angle bracket, and then a type, and then a name, like, I don't know, numbers. And what this says is declare an array of integers, and I want it called numbers. So what this thing can hold is integers.
Yep.
It can't hold strings, it can't hold floats, it can hold integers. Okay, now that I have a place to put integers,
Yeah.
I'm going to write one kind of loop, and I'm going to fill up this array.
Okay.
So this is what's called a for loop. Okay. A for loop is a loop that you use when you know at the beginning of the loop how many times you want the loop to run.
Okay.
The for loop is really a loop where you can design the whole loop at the top.
Yeah.
So there's three parts here. There's this part, there's this part, and there's this part. And understanding how the loop works will come from understanding what these three parts are doing. So let me explain the first part. What this says is, hey, when the loop starts, the first time, make I equal to 0.
Okay.
And this says, this middle term here says, this loop will run while I is less than 100.
Huh. And
then what this
plus
says is plus plus I. So the first time the code gets inside the loop, I will be 0.
yeah.
And once it hits this semicolon right here, it'll actually run this third term. And then it'll go back into the loop again.
Huh.
And actually what it does is it will run the third term, and then it checks, is I still less than 100? It is? Okay, we'll go back in again.
Okay.
So I will be 0, right? And then it'll bounce back up to the top, and it'll go plus plus I. And then I will become 1, and it will then check, hey, is 1 less than 100?
Yeah.
And it will say, yes, 1 is less than 100.
You mean I is less than 100?
Well, remember, I just became 1, right?
Oh.
I was 0, and then we ran this, and I became 1, right?
Yeah.
Because 0 plus 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 would be 1, right? So I is less than 100 because it's 1 now. And so then we go into the loop body right here.
Yeah.
And this loop, why don't I just show you this? If I do C out I, I want you to see something here. Now I'm going to go over here and compile this. Okay, now it printed a bunch of stuff when I ran it. If you noticed, so we start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but look, we stop at 99.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because when it got to be 100, 100 is not less than 100.
Yeah.
It's equal to 100. So what does that mean? Does this mean that this loop only ran 99 times?
No.
No.
Ran 100.
Ran 100 because the first time was 0.
Yep.
This is important. In C and C++, they're known as zero-based languages. And that means that the first item in something like an array is item 0. And so that's convenient.
JavaScript, like
It's the same in
0
Java.
being the first number.
Yeah, it's the same there. Most programming
I have no
languages.
idea why it does that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to erase this line, and what we're going to do is we're going to put these numbers into our vector, our array.
Yeah?
Remember our vector up here was called numbers, right? So I'm going to say numbers dot push back I.
Now what does that do?
What pushback does is adds the integer that you give it right here to the end of the array. So the array starts out empty. There's nothing in it, right? So the first time it's called, it's putting something at the beginning of the array. Do you understand?
I get it.
Now, if I wanted to print these out, I could do this again. I is less than 100, plus I. C out I. Oops. I'm sorry. Numbers, square bracket I. endo.
Yeah, what does that do?
Well, what the square bracket does is it lets me access one of the integers in the vector
Oh.
by what number it is.
Oh.
So we just pushed 100 integers into this vector, right?
Yeah.
And now we're looping from 0 to 100 again, except for this time we're printing what's inside the vector. We're not printing I.
Yeah.
So let's compile this and run it and see what happens.
So I didn't know you could use a variable when doing that. And I remember the square bracket thing from JavaScript because that's how it will, in both those languages, that's how it reads. That's how it tells if it's a variable or
An array. Yeah.
Like something in an array.
You didn't know you could use a variable for the index of the array?
Nope, never knew that.
Yeah. So that's called an index in the array. That variable is called an index into the array. Yes, it's super important because sometimes you won't know. Like in this program, we know it's 100, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes in when you write real programs, what you do is you ask the user a question, and then, like maybe I'm writing a program to keep track of, I don't know, your employees at your company. And so maybe I ask you, how many employees do you have? I don't know what the user's going to say, so I can't write the code with some number in mind, right? I have to ask the user, and then I have to create a vector with that number of things in it, right?
Yeah.
Well, with this, I could do that, right?
Oh.
I could at the start here, I could say, see out, how many numbers do you want to put in the vector, right?
Huh.
And we could just write that many things into the vector.
Huh.
Maybe I should do that. You want to do that?
Not really.
Okay.
I already made a program that essentially does that.
Yeah. Okay.
You just need to add in the question, which we haven't even learned how to do yet.
So, now here's the thing about vector. There's a lot of things you can do with the vector.
Yeah.
For example, I could have done this. When I created it. And what that says is create this vector with 100 integers in it.
Yeah.
And I could then just go right into I equals 0, I is less than 100, plus I. I could then do this. Numbers I equals I.
Yeah.
And look, I'm filling up that vector. So this square bracket part, you can use this on the left-hand side of an equal sign or on the right. In other words, you can assign to it like it's a variable. Do you understand?
Ah.
We're assigning whatever is in I to the ith slot in the numbers array here.
Huh. So you're assigning the number of the slot to itself.
Yeah.
I get it.
So now, so arrays are just big collections of variables that you access by number.
Huh.
Number 1, number 2, number 3. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you can't put different kinds of things in the same array.
Yeah.
Like you can't have some of the elements of an array be integers and
Yeah.
some of them be strings. It
Yeah.
won't like that.
It doesn't understand that.
Yeah. When you get real advanced, and maybe we'll eventually keep making these videos, I can show you some tricks where you can kind of do that, but normally it can't do that.
Oh.
Let's see, is there anything else? No, I think that's a decent introduction to for loops and arrays in C++.
I thought you were going to do both types of loops.
Oh, you want to talk about while loops too?
Yep.
Okay.
You taught me about while loops a little while ago, and I use it for some programs.
That's right.
Just so you don't think that I already know something like.
Yeah, I told him we were going to talk about
Yeah.
for loops and while loops and arrays.
And he told me about while loops, but I had no idea what a for loop did in this type of programming. Because I know in JavaScript there's while and for, but they're switched when you go into this one. So I had no idea what they were going to do. Like a for loop in JavaScript is used for like running something over and over again, and in JavaScript a while loop, like you have to like eventually stop it.
Well, it's actually exactly the same. The for loop in JavaScript and
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. I was confused.
Okay, let's talk about this while loop that I just wrote here.
Yeah.
So I still have this vector of numbers with 100 things in it. I declare a variable called I, and I start it at value 0. And then I go into this while loop, and the while loop says, while I is less than 100. So it's going to keep running this loop while I is less than 100. Now, inside the body of the loop, I'm saying numbers, square bracket, I, equals I. Again, I'm filling up this array, this vector, with whatever the value of I is. And then on the second line of the loop, I increment I. So how many times do you think this loop is going to run?
100 times.
It's going to run 100 times.
Except for it's not going to write. I mean, that's not writing it. It's the other loop writing it.
Well, it's not printing it. You mean printing it out?
Yeah.
It's just assigning to it. Right.
Yep.
Now, I have a question. What if I didn't do that?
Okay.
Do you want to see what happens?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's gonna really mess up. It doesn't print anything. Yay!
Well, you notice the program isn't ending.
Yep.
It's running full speed right now.
Jeez.
In fact, I'll show you something. Watch this. If I go Control-Shift-T, top. You see, there's our program right there. It's using up almost 100% of our CPU right now.
Okay, close out the program right now. Jeez. Just press Control-C.
Yeah. Okay. And the reason it was not ending is that the loop says while I is less than 100, but we don't ever change I.
Yeah.
So I is going to just stay at 0 the entire...
Yeah. So you're supposed to, that's why you're supposed to do plus plus I.
That's
But
right.
why is it plus plus I instead of I plus plus?
Actually, you can do both in C++.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
But plus plus I is slightly faster.
Oh.
And eventually, if we keep doing these videos, I'll explain why. But for now, you can probably just remember that plus plus I is slightly faster. So for things like this, it's better to use it. Okay, so that's a while loop. You learned about for loops. For loops have those 3 parts at the top.
Yep.
What the variable starts at, the test to see if we should keep running, and then an increment for the variable. And while loops, they just have a test at the top, and you have to do the incrementing in the body of the loop. Now, I sort of wasn't maybe completely clear. There's actually one more kind of loop. But
What?
it's very simple if you understand the while loop. It's called the do loop.
Huh.
And it works like
Really?
this.
It's called the do loop.
It is. Now, I gotta put a semicolon on there. Okay. So it looks this exact same except for I moved the while to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
There's one difference. If the while, let's imagine the while was up at the top again.
Yeah.
If I was 100, it wouldn't even ever run the loop, would it?
Yeah.
Okay, well this do loop, it's always going to do it at least once. Because it doesn't test until the bottom.
Oh.
You understand?
I get it.
So if you know for sure that you need this thing to run once, but you're not sure if you need to run it more than once, you can use a do while.
Oh, that's cool.
These are more rare,
Yeah.
but I think most of the time you'll use for loops, and occasionally you'll use while loops.
Yeah, I've been using while loops the entire time,
Yeah.
and it's not really as good as a for loop or a do loop. Like a do loop, I can find uses for that because I'm a creative person.
That's right. Okay, well, that's another episode of C++ for Noobs. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again.
Ugh, really? You messed it up? Bye. Wait, what? That's not the command, Dad.